Have Ghostbusters been one of the most exciting franchises in Hollywood? There are recent updates on changes to Ghostbusters Afterlife 2. Who is the new director of Ghostbusters? In this video, there is so much information about Ghostbusters, especially updates on the legacy characters that should be introduced in the next movie. The Ghostbusters Afterlife is already making waves despite not being released yet. Stay tuned to find out. First up, what is the latest development on Ghostbusters Afterlife 2? With the addition of Gil Kenan as director, who also contributed to the script of the first film, Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters Afterlife 2 is making great strides. Gil Kenan, who previously worked on the script for Ghostbusters Afterlife, returns to direct the sequel. Kenan made his name with various horror genre projects, including his feature directorial debut, Monster House, and the 2015 Poltergeist remake, before he teamed up with Jason Reitman to bring the sci-fi comedy franchise back to the big screen. The return of Kenan was previously confirmed, and he'll be working with Reitman to co-write Ghostbusters Afterlife 2. The news that Gil Kenan will be directing the upcoming Ghostbusters sequel, Afterlife 2, was reported by Deadline. Kenan, who co-wrote the first film in the series with director Jason Reitman, is back to co-write the screenplay with Reitman and take over the director's chair from his former collaborator, who will continue to serve as a producer. What follows is a statement Kenan made after being hired as a director. "It's an incredible privilege to take on the director role in the next installment of the Spengler family saga. If I could go back to 1984, I'd tell the kid in the 6th row of the Man Valley West that he would be the director of a Ghostbusters movie." So, what can we expect from Ghostbusters Afterlife 2? Ghostbusters Afterlife 2 has been in the works for quite some time, and though not much is known about it as of this writing, previous reports have indicated that it will continue the Spengler family story from the first film, and that the action will return to New York City. The post-credit scene in Ghostbusters Afterlife hints that the sequel will center around the Ghostbusters' iconic headquarters, and the working title for the film is Firehouse, which suggests just that. Curiously, insiders say they've heard Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd will be back for Ghostbusters Afterlife 2. It will be interesting to see what the plot of Ghostbusters Afterlife 2 is like, especially since McKenna Grace has already been confirmed to reprise her role as the granddaughter of Harold Ramis's Egon Spengler. It's reasonable to assume that the Spengler family will face a new version of Viggo the Carpathian in New York City in the sequel to Ghostbusters, given that the film brought back a threat from the first film in the franchise. Gozer. Ghostbusters Afterlife's formula of recycling the original film was met with mixed reviews, so it might be prudent for the next installment to steer clear of any other legacy ghosts. Winston Zeddemore will appear in some capacity in the sequel Ghostbusters Afterlife 2, as Ernie Hudson recently stated that he had seen a version of the script and was very excited by it. His identity as the Firehouse's current owner allows him to fund the Spenglers' revival of the business, or recruit them to help fight a new supernatural threat to the city. How everything fits together between now and December 20th, 2023, when Ghostbusters Afterlife 2 is released in theaters, we'll have to wait and see. Next up, who are the legacy characters the next movie must include? In their ghost investigations, the Ghostbusters frequently consult Tobin's spirit guide. The upcoming entry promises to reveal new details about this venerable figure. We need to learn more about one particular Ghostbusters legacy character in the next film. Despite its enduring popularity, the Ghostbusters film series has had an unusual journey to the big screen. The cast and crew of 1984 original weren't enthusiastic about returning for a sequel, despite the film's massive success. The success of the Real Ghostbusters cartoon show ensured the franchise's continued popularity throughout the decade. The studio eventually convinced director Ivan Reitman and the main cast to make a sequel. The nearly Banshee-centric Ghostbusters 2 was less well received than the original, and the 5-year gap between the two films was seen as too long. It's also common knowledge that Bill Murray was disappointed with the sequel and has been dead set against making a third installment. In 2016, director Paul Feig brought the Ghostbusters franchise back to theaters with the gender-swapped reboot titled Ghostbusters Answer the Call. The remake was a box office flop, unfortunately. As a result, in 2021, a sequel to the original Ghostbusters was released called Ghostbusters Afterlife, which followed Egon's children as they dug into their grandfather's scientific past and discovered his ghost-busting legacy. In other related news, Ghostbusters Afterlife promises there might be new entries. In the post-credit scene of Ghostbusters Afterlife, it was hinted that more films would be in the franchise, though a sequel to this film has already been confirmed. Afterlife, which corrected some problems introduced in The Force Awakens, relied heavily on franchise nostalgia, with Gozer returning as the main antagonist despite positive reviews for the film's performances and tribute to the late Egon performer Harold Ramis. New paths need to be taken, but there is one Ghostbusters legacy character whose history should be investigated: paranormal author John Tobin. If you recognize the name, he wrote Tobin Tobin's Spirit Guide, a book referenced extensively in all of the Ghostbuster films. To learn more about a particularly elusive spirit, the team frequently consults Tobin's Spirit Guide, a tome that contains exhaustive information on ghosts, entities, supernatural events, cults, and more. John Tobin's book included an in-depth analysis of the 1920s New York cult, led by Ivo Shandor, J.K. Simmons in Afterlife. Tobin is a legacy character from the Ghostbusters franchise who has shown up in the IDW comic series and other spin-offs, but he has a fascinating history that could be explored further in the main series. It's worth digging into how John Tobin gathered so much information about ghosts and spirits in the early 20th century. Maybe he had his brushes with the supernatural, and in a natural setup for a prequel, he tried his hand at ghostbusting or spirit capture. The next Ghostbusters film could delve into his backstory or examine the ongoing effects of one of his cases. The series has taken a natural turn by delving into the history of Tobin's Spirit Guide, and the idea that John Tobin is a steampunk Ghostbuster is intriguing. Next up, what are the theories in Ghostbusters Afterlife? The fact that founding member Dr. Egon Spengler has a daughter was the biggest reveal in Ghostbusters Afterlife, but one theory about the scientist may explain away the movie's major plot hole in this regard. Egon's academic career was the defining aspect of his life before Ghostbusters, as portrayed by the late Harold Ramis. Ghostbusters Afterlife in the original films provide a new perspective that suggests the character may have been more nuanced than originally assumed. In this story about a family who inherits a farm, the youngest child, Phoebe, learns that the patriarch, Egon Spengler, was a famous paranormal investigator. Egon's ghost, who is still haunting the farmhouse after the events of Afterlife, makes it clear that he has unfinished business and knowledge of an impending apocalypse as Phoebe's family learns about the history of the original Ghostbusters. Since Egon was the type to put work before family, viewers of Ghostbusters may have wondered how Ramis, who was 40 years old, managed to start a family. Sean Robert, via Twitter, brought up a fan theory that suggests Egon may have been a father before the New York Cross Rift and had been secretly raising his daughter. Egon's secret family provides greater insight into his personality and resolves a major plot hole. Callie, Egon's daughter, reconciles with her departed father in Ghostbusters Afterlife. He may not have been the best dad by prioritizing his career over his family, but he loved her very much. Callie discovers pictures of her around her father's lab in one of the film's most touching moments, but keen observers picked out 2 years, 1984 and 1987, in his affectionate collection. Egon mentioned taking his daughter from REM testing in 1984 and going on vacation that year. By 1987, she was ready for braces, so he wrote about that. If the events of Ghostbusters were supposed to have happened in 1984, the year of its release, then Egon was likely married and or a father by then. Others have bolstered the theory by noting that Egon seemed oddly more parental in Ghostbusters 2, and that he was conducting research into children and families, perhaps to use science to become a better parent. In other related news, is Ghostbusters Afterlife a tribute? In addition to being a tribute to Harold Ramis, who played Egon Spengler, Ghostbusters Afterlife was written as such because Ramis developed an emotional connection to the character while composing the script. It's interesting to note that, like Dr. Spengler, Ramis had a secret daughter with clueless director Amy Heckerling in 1985. The retcon of Egon's daughter may be a subtle nod and tribute to the actor who played him, as well as an explanation for why Egon never mentioned them. However, this isn't as obvious as director Jason Reitman's other Easter eggs. Unfortunately, guys, that's all the time we've got for today. Make sure to share and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell icon for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.